In this tutorial, I want to look at how to create a realistic shadow in Photoshop. So jumping straight into it, once you have your subject, if we click on that layer, right click and select duplicate layer. Once that's selected, we need to rename this layer shadow and select OK. Go down to the effects panel and select color overlay. This is going to give the subject a silhouette look. We want this to be full black. If it isn't full black, select the square and alter the color and select OK. Check the blend modes on normal and hit OK again. So now we've got our shadow and we need to drag this shadow behind our subject. For mine, it's a man running and I've dropped that behind. So that's behind that layer. We can lock the top subject so nothing happens to that now. Go back to our shadow, select the move tool, and we just want to move this shadow slightly to the left, slightly above the subject. Now you have to determine where your light source is coming from. For mine, we can see that it's coming from the right hand side. There's a lot of light on the front of his face, on his chest, on the front of his legs, on his thighs. So I'm taking the impression that it's coming from the right, therefore the shadow should go to the opposite side, to the left and slightly above. Slightly above gives it a bit more dynamic, a bit more realistic. If we had it just level with the subject, it might not be as convincing. So for me, nudging it up slightly off center gives that natural look. Now, a shadow is never crisp silhouette outline. So what we need to do now is go to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. Once we select that, we'll see it softens out the shadow dramatically, and we can increase this how we see fit. Depending on where we imagine this light source being, how close is it? Is it far away? For this, I'm going to go for about 14, 15, somewhere between there. Let's go 14.8. I'm pretty happy with that. If we select OK, now that's been applied, so we can toggle that Gaussian blur on and off now. We can always alter it later on if we don't feel it's appropriate. So now, obviously, no shadow is full black. There will be some transparency to it. So we need to go to opacity on the top right and bring that down to about 60%. Actually, let's bring that down to 35%. See, it's all about eyeballing it. So for me, that's more realistic now looking at it from a 35% point of view. And we're pretty much there. I'm quite happy with that. You know, that's quite convincing. The message is clear. It might not be perfect down to a T, the perfect shadow, but it is achieving the results I want. The way we can take this a step further is if we select the shadow, select clipping mask, that's going to create a white box here. If we go to the gradient tool, make sure we have a black to transparent gradient and slightly drag from left to right and keep doing this so we can see it feathering. As you can see now, we've just kind of distorted this shadow. It's a bit less obvious here, darker closer to the subject. And again, this is giving it a much more natural appeal. All shadows will be in balance in some way. So again, it's just making this more convincing. And if we select back into the image of the shadow, go to image, if we go to edit, transform, and skew, we hold the shift button, slightly drag just the top side of the shadow. This just gives this shadow now an even more dynamic look. It looks like it's really leaping back against an imaginary wall if there was one there. And from that, I'm very happy with how that looks. That is clear now. It engages with the light on the right. It's convincing shadow. It's natural. It's not too cookie cutter of the same subject. So that's it. It's 4.5 minutes. That's how quick you can make a shadow in Photoshop. If you have a realistic background now, if it was a brick wall, brick floor, this would work just the same. You might just have to change the blend mode of the shadow. It might be an overlay or darken. That'll be something you look in when you've got your new environment. So I hope you found this tutorial interesting, helpful, useful. Any questions, anything you get stuck on, please let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.